Yeah? How we doing? All right? We're all here? Okay, good. Tonight, one of my favorite topics. I think just an amazing subject. And I'll begin by sharing with you that I have a cousin who's a famous off-Broadway actor. Nobody who's not in the off-Broadway world knows who he is, right? As a matter of fact, I've met some people who were in the off-Broadway world, and they say, "Oh, he's your cousin? Lonnie Price is your cousin? Wow, yeah, big time." And the reason why I'm telling you that is that my wife and I, we had a dubious distinction that we were invited one time to be helpful to him. He needed us to come down to help him. He was producing a play. And what happened was, I'll tell you why it was a dubious distinction, not quite a full honor that we had, because he was producing a play, and the name of the play was called The Producer. It was called The Immigrant. And it was about a Jew that comes to the United States from Europe, settles in all places, Texas, and begins to assimilate into American culture, and raises 5 children. And that was really the basic storyline of the play. And it seems that since he was the producer of the play, he was afraid that there were certain things that were scripted into the play. He was afraid that somebody looking on for the first time, or people in the audience who might know what the authentic article looked like, he might be intimidated. They might catch a glimpse of the authentic article, and they might have a criticism against him. So when it called in the play, for example, the script said, a davening scene, prayer scene, afternoon prayer service. So he didn't know what that meant. What does that require? He didn't know how to produce that. And when it called for a Shabbos scene, he didn't know what to do to produce a Shabbos scene. So he called up his crazy cousin, me and my wife, and we came backstage and I showed him how to daven. I showed him, he didn't know, what that meant. I guess when they put the script together, they assumed that people knew what davening was, what praying was. And, here it was, years later, and a young Jewish boy from Long Island who had become assimilated into the American culture didn't know what it meant. So I showed him, you hold the siddur this way, and told him how he has to bang his chest. At this point, after so many seconds, he didn't know how to say one word in Hebrew, but I told him how to move his lips like you drug up one long piece of spaghetti. I told him, that's how you do, and then it's a couple of bangs, and then you bow, and then told him how many bows and how to space out the bowing until, and a couple of times you raise your hand and you clench your fist a couple of times and you do a few things, and I showed him how to daven to show that he's having a lot of kavanah and a lot of great intent, and what the intention was, and when we went to see the play, my wife and I, the seat that we had was right in front of where he was davening. It was like we were like nose to nose. And we made sure it was a clean play and everything, and we stood there, and it was a davening, a mincha, like I never saw, like I wish on Yom Kippur, at Ne'ilah, right at the close of Yom Kippur, I wish I could, achieve what he looked like. He won an Obi, like an Academy Award or something like that. I don't know if it was for the davening or for his directing of the play, but it was really intense and it was quite amazing. And I said to my wife afterwards, I said, his mincha was so good, it was so powerful, and such a performance. I said he could probably daven in most shuls across the country, and in certain places he could probably even lead the congregation. That's what I was thinking also, he moved those lips and then he backed up. Oh, says Shalom Burma. It was great. And then there was another scene where it was a dubious distinction. They put us into the playbill, they call it, into the program, and it said Label Lam. There we were when we came in. Label Lam, Jewish consultants. I said, wow, that's great. But then we realized he didn't ask us everything, because when it came to the serving of the meal on Friday night, they brought out, he didn't ask us about the menu, they brought out chicken soup, immediately followed by cheese blintzes. You're like, oh no, milk, meat, with nothing in between, maybe a 6-hour Devar Torah in between would have done it, but, and so we didn't know where to crawl, where to put the disclaimer, how to get our names off the program. At that point it was already too late. Who advised these people? But the scene I want to tell you about is that it seems I didn't hear there was a shortage of Jewish actresses in New York. Did you hear about this? I didn't know. They couldn't find anybody else to play this Jewish mother for European, Eastern European mother from Poland with a Yiddish accent. They couldn't find anybody except a little red-headed girl, an Irish girl with an Irish brogue, no less. Like this, like speaking. And she had to remake her whole accent. So my wife had to show her backstage how to light Shabbos candles. And there she was, she lit the Shabbos candles. The first time she said, "Am I scratching my eyes?" And I said, no, that's the religion down the block. This is, everything is nice and easy. That's it. It's a wave in front of the eyes. This is how you do it. And my wife lit the candles and blew out the candles. It was like a Tuesday morning, and we lit and blew them out until she got it. Until, this lady did it, it imitated just the way my bubby did it. And then my wife said, "Take, you got it. That's it. You succeeded." And then she turns to my wife and she asks a question that maybe only an actress can ask this question. Listen to what she says. She says, "Now that I know how to do this act, now that I know how to light the candles," she says, for her method acting, there's a certain type of, acting form where you have to get into the character and get into the mode of the person that you're, not just to say the lines. She says, "What's my motivation?" That's what she wants to know. What's my motivation? What is it that delivers this deed? What is it that delivers and animates this action that I'm doing? Wow, what a great question. My wife gave her the local answer, Shabbat. It's like you're working hard all week long and suddenly the bell rings and now you settle down and peace descends and the feeling like everything is complete already, even if it's not complete, and you accept, you're home and, all the nice things. But the question that this lady asked is still reverberating through the cosmos of my mind. What's my motivation? What's our motivation? We have a whole code of Jewish law, a Shulchan Aruch, that tells us, we bow in this direction, and we light at this time, and we eat now, and then we stop eating, and then, this is a time when we can make weddings, this is a time when we can't make weddings, all the different laws about, Hanukkah and Purim and Shabbos and Yontif, and all the different times. We have a whole schedule and menu of things that we do and we don't do. But the question is, what's my motivation? What is it that gives meaning and gives purpose and life to these acts, these Jewish deeds that we do, these mitzvot, right? It's a very, very good question. Yeah, there's tremendous books. There's a Chovos Levavos. There's a Duties of the Heart. There's whole giant books that are written about this subject. But I'd like to try to approach it in the following way. That question, in order to understand anything, I'll say it in the affirmative. Something has to be seen in the right context, right? And also, in order to, when something is seen in the wrong context, it's very easy to misunderstand, right? For example, I go to the bank with my kids, and let's say there's a time I deposit some money, I put some money into the bank, and I get a little pink slip back. So the kids see, you put cash into the bank, and you get like a little pink slip, and the kids say, "Hey, how come they keep the money and all you get a little piece of paper?" They know money can buy candy, can buy goodies, they can buy, So at a certain infantile mentality, they don't understand. Hey, what was that about? How come they keep your money and all you get is a little piece of paper with numbers with scribbles on it? Don't worry. That means the money is in the bank. They don't get it. So they're not seeing it in the right context. They're too small to appreciate. There's a place, there's a junior high school field that I walk past all the time on Shabbat morning on my way to shul. And all through the year, sometimes there's Spanish guys are playing soccer. There's a certain season, it's right before baseball season, where there's some Pakistani guys are out there, and they're playing cricket. Now, I know a lot about baseball. I'm very hot on baseball. I know baseball, I know teams, I know how to play. That's my whole ill-gotten youth was playing baseball. So, I know baseball, I know quality baseball playing when I see it. I don't know cricket, what they're doing. It looks like something like baseball. I don't know what they're doing. They're throwing the ball with a stiff arm. It bounces. They got some guys out there with a flat bat. It looks like a beaver's tail. They hit, they swing, they miss. I don't know. The ball dribbles in a certain direction. Nobody runs. I don't know if it's batting practice. I don't know what they're doing, And I'm sure they're also looking at me wondering, who's this guy with the barcodes on his shoulders, passing by. Every day I'm trying to pass by on Shabbat and I'm trying to pick up a few pointers. I can't figure out cricket because I don't understand the context. I don't know what the game is. So if something is seen out of context, it doesn't make any sense. To the people who are playing cricket makes a lot of sense, right? To somebody who's looking at it from a baseball perspective, they don't know what they're looking at. So the same thing, if we want to understand what are mitzvahs, right? What's a mitzvah? So in order to understand a mitzvah, we have to see a mitzvah in the context, in the grandest context of all. We have to understand it in the context of all contexts. Okay, I got that in. Okay, my orthodontist told me don't say that too many times. We have to understand We have to understand the mitzvahs in the context of all contexts, of all of the grandest possible field. And therefore, just to give like a little introduction, a running jump into our subject over here today, let's go back to the very, very beginning. There's a Mishnah in the 5th chapter of Pirkei Avos that says that the world was created. The Hashem made the world in 10 statements. That's what the Mishnah says. Basara Maimaros Nivra Olav. God created the world in 10 statements. Why did God create the world in 10 statements? The Mishnah asks. God can do anything. He could have made the world in 1 statement. Why did he make it in 10 statements? Right? Good question. That's what the Mishnah is concerned about. Right? God can do anything. Right? And we can ask that on any artist also. If an artist can do something, such a thing called economy of motion, if you can say it, if you can do it in 1 brushstroke, why use 10 brushstrokes? If a poet can say it in 1 word, why should he use 10 words? So the same thing, why did the Almighty use 10 statements to create the world? And the Mishnah gives an answer that's not so easy to understand. It says, and by the way, what are those 10 statements? Okay, so the 10 times it says in the Chumash, Vayomer Elokim, and then God said this, and God said let there be light, and God said let there be this, all the different statements. By the way, when you add them up, it only comes out to 9. Okay, when you look at them and try to, I worked it out myself, looked it up. It only comes out to 9, and I'm not the first person to notice it. And the Talmud says, oh, you know something? The word Bereshis, the first word in the Chumash, was also one of those 10 statements. Okay, so we'll go back and visit that in a second. So the Mishnah gives the following answer. The Mishnah says, in order to punish people who destroyed and undermined and sabotaged the world that was created with 10 statements, and in order to give a sachar tov, a good reward to those people who helped and endorsed and promoted and improved the world that was created with 10 statements. Now, what does that mean? What are those 10 statements? So we said before that not only is the 10 times it says, and God said this, and the Almighty said this, and the Almighty said that, but the word Bereshis was also one of those statements. So what are these statements? And let's take a look right from the very, very beginning. And this is all by way of introduction. The first statement, the word that's most misunderstood and mistranslated in the whole Torah, that's probably also the most famous. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Right? That's the way we usually hear it translated. Right? Some people ask, "Where's baseball in the Torah?" In the big inning, God created the heavens and the earth. And they said, but the truth is, Rashi tells us right away, that's not what Bereshis means. Bereshis means Reshis Mamlachto. Bereshis means the beginning of something. So Rashi tells us that Bereshis means in the beginning of the creation of the heavens and the earth was void and nothing. Right? Which means the following thing. That before the world was created, right? Right? By the way, I spoke some of these ideas out when I was in Houston, Texas, at NASA. You never heard about NASA? NASA Vinishma down in Houston, Texas, yeah? So I told them about, in the latter part of the 20th century, there was a paradigm in science that gained great approval. That's probably the dominant theory right now about, what the universe is about. And it was once believed that the world is like a static state. Scientists were thinking it's a static state universe. Like, it is what it is. These chairs were always here. Everything is just the way it is. That's it. The stars were as they are. And there's another theory that says, no, history started from a certain point. It's called the Big Bang Theory. You heard of the Big Bang Theory? Right? We've always believed in the Big Bays theory. The Torah begins with the letter Bays, and just like the camera that moves forward, this direction, right? Everything's locked in. So the Torah says, the Mishnah in Masechta Chagiga says, don't look above, don't look below, right? Don't look at what came before. History starts to move in a certain direction. The Big Bang Theory says everything started from a little dot, and all of a sudden what was inside that dot, what came before that dot, and who put that dot there, suddenly everything exploded and the world is expanding and moving out, and there's an echo that still comes from that Big Bang. It seems like history is moving and life is moving and flowing out all from that giant Bays, from that Big Bang, the Big Bays theory, right? What came before the Bays? I asked the scientists, and they said, nobody knows. I told them nobody knows. And I said, does anybody know? Nobody knows. Okay, nobody even has a theory, because nobody can look over there. There's no possible way of thinking about it. But we know what came before the Big Bays. And therefore the word Bereshis doesn't mean in the beginning what came first and what came second. because it would have said Berishona, right? Bereshis means in the beginning of the heavens and the earth was void and empty. What was before the world was void and empty? Listen to this. Put on your mystical seatbelts, please, and hold on to your neshamot, hold on to your souls, right? What came before the bays of Bereshis? What do you suppose comes before the bays, right? Is the letter Aleph, right? Why did the Torah begin with the letter bays? Because before the letter bays is the letter Aleph of, anybody here? Adon Olam Asher Malach. B'terem kol Yitzir Nivra. Hashem was the Adon Olam, master of the world. B'terem kol Yitzir Nivra, before anything came into being. So what preceded the creation of the world was the Almighty, right? And let's just imagine, we're trying to get a picture into what creation is. We'll just imagine before there was a creation, before the Big Bang, there was only the Almighty. And the mystical books, let's say the Sefer Tanya, calls it the Or Ein Sof, the endless light of God. We can't even say what it is because we can't imagine infinity. All we can say is it doesn't end. So an ocean of endless light. And now inside that ocean of endless light, there suddenly opens up a little dark space, a little dot, a little bubble. And that little bubble becomes now the place of creation. This becomes the little circle of creation over here. This little dark. So a little bubble that has the illusion that God is not there where He withdrew Himself. That's the mystical concept, somewhat of tzimtzum, of the Almighty removing Himself from His place. And this whole giant hull, this chalal of a world, of a universe, is really the Almighty removing Himself and being right there at the edge of creation. So in the beginning of the creation of the heavens and the earth, the first thing that was created was avoiding nothingness, was an empty space that seemed to have the vacuousness, seems to have the avoidance of Hashem. But now what are the 10 statements? We have to understand what are these 10 statements. Now the first statement, Bereshis, was the all-inclusive statement where everything, all the stuff was there. And now everything else, now the whole recipe is just being teased out of that original stuff, which is really the scientific paradigm also. It's all the same ingredients now being mixed and matched and developed until the beans and everything becomes a thicker and thicker chult, right? Let's start again. What's the first statement that we know that's a statement besides Bereshis? Anybody know what's the first statement? And the Almighty said, Hashem said, Vayomer Elokim, anybody? Bum, 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 bum. Let there be light. Let there be light, right? I remember being at a seminar in California one time. I don't know how many people are going to know, but, and in California it's a little bit different. I don't mean, if you're from California, please forgive me, Things a little bit different there, Instead of saying amen, they say, oh wow. It's a little bit different, People washing the, Nagelwasser, and afterwards they're washing Mayim Machonim, Mayim Machonim Chovah. They're washing with Perrier, not with, whatever, a little bit. So they had a bunch of American guys, and they were sitting at a table, and they're going, instead of singing Shabbos Miros on Friday night, they were singing Let It Be, they're singing like Beatles songs or whatever, all the Israeli rabbis didn't know what they're doing. I said, let them be, But they get to the part, Mother Mary. I said, no, guys. Now, even I went over and I said, keep it Jewish tonight. Keep it Jewish. We're having a Jewish Shabbaton over here. So I said, let there be light. So light is interesting. We'll get into it a little bit later on. Light is something which is, it's the notion, it projects the idea of thought. There's light before there was even a planet, So there was a light before there was a light. The light that we see over here is only a thin spectrum of the light that we really experience. There's many broad bands of light and waves that we don't experience. So this is some deeper, more phantasmal light that we don't even that we don't have contact with. It's somehow it's connected with Ruach HaKodesh and that little light that's on top of a child's head that allows him to see from one end of the world to the other. It's some kind of sublime and supernal light. Okay, but that original light over there, that was the first thing that's created. And then what happens is things begin to become thicker and thicker and thicker. The stuff that we know that's the closest to spirituality is light. And the world now starts, it's like the Almighty starts to drop down a thin curtain between Him and His creation. And the first thing that's created is light. Interesting, when light is created, time is created. And again, at the end of the 20th century, it became appreciated in science that time is related to the speed of light, right? If I can theoretically go faster than the speed of light, I can run ahead and see what happened in the past because things are only limited to the speed of light, which is 186,000 miles a second. Okay, not too much science. I apologize. Okay, but It's interesting because it says V'hi erev, V'hi voker, Yom Echad, once light came into being. So the first veil of creation, the Almighty is standing there outside the creation. So here you have, let's say, the Almighty made the world, and yet He's standing there staring into the world. So now let's say the boss says, okay, I want to see how everybody's working, and no one's going to take a break, and no one's going to stand by the coffee machine and speak Lashon Hara about the boss or anything like that, because the boss is standing there, with his arms folded, watching everybody, right there, at the workstation. So what does a clever boss do? Right? He puts down, a little window, and he pulls the shade across, and he puts a little camera in his office, and he puts a one-way mirror in front of his window, so everybody comes over there and they think that he doesn't see, and they check their tie, and they check their sheitel, their hair, whatever it is, and they think that the boss is listening, and he knows who's loyal and who's real and who's not real. So the Almighty now starts to put down layers and layers of creation. And that's what's happening. And the first layer is the lighter stuff. And the premise is that as the world goes on and devolves, it becomes thicker and thicker. The chult becomes heavier and heavier until a certain point. Right? Until it says, the Talmud says that the Almighty said, God said, Omor alamo, die. He said to His world, enough, die. Not like we say at the Pesach Seder. Not like die. We used to say Dayenu, we sing Dayenu, right? I used to think when I was a kid that meant that's enough of the Pesach Seder, let's get on with the meal. But later on you realize it's a beautiful rhetorical device, but it's the same word. Die means enough. What was enough? The world is just thick enough, we'll see in a second, and it's just spiritual enough. It's just light enough. Okay, we'll see at what point that world hit the balance point. If I would tell you, for example, that I'm wearing sunshine on my feet, you would say, well, what does that mean? You feel like dancing, you're in a nice mood, what is it? Is that some poetic statement? I said, no, I'm really actually wearing sunshine on my feet. Yes, I'm wearing sunshine on my feet. You're wearing sunshine on your feet? I don't see that you're wearing sunshine on your feet. What are you talking about? Are you crazy? No, I'm wearing sunshine on my feet. I can demonstrate. How so? The sunlight comes pouring down onto the good earth. What he said from 93 million miles away from the sun at 186,000 miles a second. A lot of that light is dissipated into the universe and keeps on going forever and ever. Some of it is captured by some solar panels that have been planted in an open field, and we call it grass, right? And through the process of photosynthesis, it's converted into chlorophyll neatly. And along comes Elsie the cow, munch, 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 right? And not knowing how she does it, but she does it. She's able to convert that energy and to harness it, turn it into meat and turn it into milk for my kids' Honey Nut Cheerios on Shabbat morning after she's outlived her usefulness as a milking cow, although they're not really good for shechting because they develop lesions and whatever it is. But let's say, and now they shecht. And they, now meat for the cholent, okay? But they don't want to waste any parts. The hoofs go for here, and the horns go for that. And the cowhide, the leather, they send it to the cowhide leather to the Echo, a shoe store, and they make for me the wonderful shoes. And therefore, what have I got wrapped around my feet over here today? I've got genuine cowhide leather, which is really sublimated sunshine. I got sunshine on my feet. Literally, and therefore the world becomes thicker. That's the concept of tzimtzum, is the Almighty, lighter and lighter veils are becoming heavier and heavier until the Almighty said to His world, die, enough. At what point is it enough? That the soup becomes thick and thick and thick enough until man is created. Right down at the bottom of the creation, the world is just dark enough that somebody who walks in the world can go and commute to the city and back and flip channels and surf the net and go around and spend 70 years and never even ask once what's above, what's beyond, where's it coming from, where we're going to. The person can be in this little room of mirrors and it's opaque enough that the person may not even notice and may not even think to ask. Yes. And yet the world is tinged with enough wonder and splendor, and it's translucent enough that someone like Abraham Avinu originally could take a look at the world and say, hey, what's going on over here? What's this all about? Where does this cleverness and this organization and this kindliness, what is it all about? And begin to ask questions enough, why, until they can find themselves back in the little breadcrumbs that lead back to the gingerbread house. And therefore the Almighty made the world at a perfect balance point that somebody who doesn't want to see Hashem and doesn't want to see God, he's perfectly covered up. And to somebody who wants to see Hashem, they can find the little windows, they can find those little insights and enough information, plenty of information has been left for a person to find their way back. So that's the concept of the world. Therefore, the Hebrew word for olam, the Hebrew word for world, is olam, and the word olam comes from a three-letter root, ayin lamed mem, which doesn't mean world. What does the word ayin lamed mem mean? Anybody? Hidden. That means that the world is a hiding place. And the premise is not that we're hiding, just the opposite. Hashem is hiding, right? And the world, and therefore, even though it started out getting darker and darker, and down at the bottom of the creation is man. And he's made from the dust of the earth, from the dark stuff of the earth, from the bottom of the creation. But then, Vayipach Papab Nishmas Chaim, the Almighty breathes a breath of life into him from beyond creation, and therefore man is stretched out like Jacob's ladder, right? V'hinei sulamutz of artzav, Arosha Magia Shemaima, and we're stretched in both directions. And Malach Elohim Olim V'yordim Bo. If a person will let go a little bit of his spiritual source, so he'll come plummeting down to earth, And if the person lets go a little bit, Lech Lecha Me'artzecha, lets go of a little bit of his earthiness, then the person will begin to climb and he'll begin to go up in the other direction. And that's really the test, the balance point in which the whole world and this free will play has been put into place for each and every one of us. So it's not that we're hiding, it's that the Almighty is hiding. He's the one that's hiding. Now, I remember once I heard a story like this, and this is just an introduction to what we're going to talk about. And that is that there was a great rabbi, and his name was, I think, the Apter Rav Abraham Yeshua Heschel, I think his name was. And he was called the Ohev Yisrael, the lover of Jews. I think that was the name of the sefer that he wrote. So apparently the story they tell, this Hasidic tale, is that he was holding court, and all his Hasidim were standing close to him, and he was speaking and learning with them. And all of a sudden, a little boy came running into the room, crying, upset. And the sea split, they opened up a little space, the Hasidim, so that the boy can come right to the Rebbe's heart. And the Rebbe sat and everybody was eavesdropping to hear what the boy was crying about. It wasn't too difficult because he was, carrying on. And the boy told his little tale of woe. He says, what's the problem? He says, we're playing hide and go seek. It's not a new game, it's an old time game, And it may be the oldest game in the world. We'll see. And he said, and when it was Shimon's turn to hide, we went and we found him. He says, when it was Yanki's turn to hide, we went and we found him. When it was David's turn to hide, we went and we found him. And the Rebbe says, what happened? He says, when it was my turn to hide, everybody went home. Everybody went home. I remember when I was a kid, I remember we went out on the golf course and we played hide and go seek, and we left one kid out there. That was it, it's terrible, 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 cruel thing. And the Rebbe started to cry along with him, and he hugged the boy, and he wiped his tears, he kissed his tears away, and he gave him from one pocket a coin, from the other pocket he gave him a candy, a chocolate, and the boy went away with a smile growing on his face. And the Hasidim gathered close to the Rebbe and said, what a great Rebbe we have. He feels the pain, he's compassionate, he's empathic to the feeling of a little boy. Right, Rebbe? He says, no. He says, is that why the Rebbe was crying? He says, no, that's not why I was crying. He says, why was the Rebbe crying? He says, now I understand. He says, how the Almighty feels. He says, when it's my turn to hide, he finds me. When it's your turn to hide, he finds you. When it's this one's turn to hide, he finds him. He says, but when Hashem's turn to hide, he says, Mi Mavakesh, who's looking for a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Right? That's the premise. It's that the world is a hiding place where Hashem is hiding, and it's our job to try to find and to see who done it. That's the introduction. That's the world. That's the stage and the context of all contexts that we were mentioning before. But now let's jump into a question, an amazing question that one of my boys asked at a Shabbos table. It must have been about 11 years ago now. I remember he must have been about 8 or 9 years old. And he looked up at me, and I felt like weak when he asked me this question. Why did I feel so bad? Because it was a brilliant and a wonderful question, and I hadn't really, and I had an answer ready for him. And it's a long explanation, and it's a nice explanation, it's a handsome explanation, but it was something that I hadn't even thought about until I was a young man in already my mid-40s. And here he was, all of 7 or 8 years old, sitting at the Shabbos table, looking at me with a certain intensity and thinking to himself and saying, Abba, he says, what happened to yesterday? Isn't that a great question? What happened to last year? You hear the question? Isn't that a great question? This is not one of those philosophical questions that people ask, sometimes I meet college students and they ask me, Rabbi, do I really exist? I've bumped into that, I get that a lot. I have an answer for that one. When people ask me, Rabbi, do I really exist? You know what I tell them? I said, let me hold on to your wallet until you figure out the answer to the question. And they go, oh, no, you don't. You know? I said, so I think that you feel that you have a sense that your wallet, at least you have to be suspicious that your wallet exists. Oh, you people, oh, the money, always the money. You know, yeah, sure. You know, so you, of course, you exist. You know, it's not really such a bad question either. But this one, it's not just one. This is a very practical question. What happened to yesterday? You ever had one of those hard days? You put in a hard day. It's like, whoa, what a day! You pressed until you couldn't even. You almost didn't get you didn't get to the pillow. You almost didn't get to the front door to put your head down. You're so exhausted. Huh? You ever had one of those hard years? You know, a hard week, a hard year. And what happens? And all of a sudden it becomes last year. Suddenly it becomes yesterday. One year my wife gave birth to twins. Congratulations. Thank you very much. It was 16 years ago. We got a birthday coming up. Thank you. We're still accepting mazel tov and presents and gifts, by the way. But sleep became a vocabulary word, you know? It was something that was just, you could look it up in the dictionary, but it was not an experience in life. We went through, my beard turned white that year, you know? You have no idea. Well, what a year. And they turned one, I put my head down and I cried like a baby. You know, I said, I can't believe we made it through a year without sleep. You know, how did we do it? How did we manage? I have no idea. We look back, how did we do it? With a whole bunch of other kids around us, and they all got off to school, and they all, and they got dressed, and they got out the door, and they studied, and they did their homework. How did we do it? I have no idea how we did it. And then it became last year. Now I remember one time I asked this question at a group at an event in New Jersey someplace, and this nice Russian lady, she said like an opera singer. She says, I said, what happened to yesterday? And she says, Rabbi, all of the yesterdays became a beautiful tomorrow. You know. And everybody applauded like it was, like Madame Butterfly or something like that, Gewalt. And I said, Madame, I don't want to, burst the bubble or, mean to put down your answer. But what happens when that beautiful tomorrow becomes yesterday? It's all building up to a beautiful tomorrow. But then tomorrow becomes yesterday. And then what happens to it? So I need to know the answer to the question. Sometimes you work hard. These people, you ever see these fellows with those at the end of the day, the person from the business, he takes one of those, it's like a brown, rusty brown bag that goes into the bank vault. You know what I'm talking about? It's like a burlap bag, and it goes into the vault, and they put it into the bank, a bank deposit from all the, from all the cash that was collected from the cash register in the day, And the guy puts it into a vault. There's something hauntingly familiar about that vault. It looks like in my mother-in-law's apartment in the Bronx, when she says, Label, throw me down the garbage. Throw me down the chute, the garbage. I said, okay, Ma, throw you down the chute, the garbage. Okay, good. So I took and I put it down the chute, and it goes into the incinerator. Throw me into the incinerator, the garbage. I said, okay, Ma, So you throw it into the incinerator, and it goes to be burnt. So is this guy taking that money from all the work and he's putting it into the incinerator? Or is he putting it into a bank vault where it stays forever? Hear what I'm asking over here? Because if I'm just working and it's all going into the incinerator, it's going to nowhere, then what was the purpose of putting in all this effort into today and putting such a big, making a big deal about today? And if it's going away someplace into a safety vault, for something, then maybe, it's worth putting even more effort into if I know that I'm accomplishing something and I'm doing something. You understand? It's a very, very practical question my son asked me. And I need to know the answer. So Rabbi Eliyahu Eliezer Dessler, famous Reb Dessler, Strive for Truth, maybe people. So he gives the following paradigm to explain what is time and what is life. And he wants to give it, it's hard to capsulize it in physical terms because it's such a time was one of the first things that was created, we said before, along with light. It's something which is hard to grasp, like light. But he puts it into two-dimensional, three-dimensional form like this, and he says, let's imagine. He says, we have one of those, I don't know, like a disco ball or something like that. You ever see one of these balls that have the little mirrors all around it, whatever. But now it's hanging like the world. Tol haaretz al blima. The world is suspended in silence. Can you imagine the earth and the sun like a chandelier without any wires? Can you imagine it's just hovering right here. Now we have this bright, shiny ball, and then on the outside of the ball, it's wrapped around like a tennis ball, like a dark cover that doesn't allow you to see to the inside. But on the outside of the ball, Reb Dessler says, he says we open up a little window. Let's say that's 1 inch by 1 inch on the outside ball. So now the outside ball has a window that allows you to see to the inside to a frame that's on the inside ball, a little square on the inside. Yeah? Okay, you understand what I'm saying so far? The outer ball has a window that allows you to see the bright, shiny ball that's on the inside, but only one little square inch by 1 inch by 1 inch window. Now, the outer ball is constantly rotating, and as it moves around, so now you're able to see another square inch. So as the window moves, as the ball moves around, it rotates around, it exposes a new square inch. At the same time, it covers up the previous square inch that was just exposed. And Reb Desso says the square inch that's exposed now is called the present. The one that was just covered up is called the past. And the one that's about to be exposed as the ball continues to rotate is called the future. That's it. And he says, and after 120 years, what happens is, he says, the ball falls off, the cover falls off. That's what life is. The cover falls off. And the ball finds itself, and the person finds himself in the world of, as we say in Adon Olam, V'hu haya, he was, V'hu hoveh, and he is, V'hu yiyeh, and he will be, V'hu mahaves hakol, and he brings everything into being. We're into the eternal world where there is no time, and there is no, theoretically, there is no space either. And therefore, whatever is on that ball is on that ball. Now, I was troubled by this, by this notion. Maybe some people, I don't want to, if anybody had an experience like this, I don't mean to bring up any negative experiences, but I've heard about a situation where somebody drowned. You ever heard about that? And everybody says the same thing. What happened when they were drowning? Anybody, what do they see? Flash in front of them? Right? People say, they're going down until the lifeguard came and plucked them out of the water and resuscitated them. They said they saw their life flash in front of them, right? So, really? Saw the light flash in front of them? It took 47 years, 70 years, 30 years, whatever. All those times, waiting for him to call, waiting for the subway to come, craning your head, looking into the subway, waiting for that light to come, waiting for the train to, and waiting for the toast to pop or the water to boil, and it took, and now it takes like that, the person was going down, and all of a sudden they saw their life flash in front of them, right? You ever wonder about that? And now all of a sudden in a few moments, it's such a quick review like that. I spoke to a few people who had that experience. Like how can that happen? It's such a quick flip book. You just you flip through all the pages like that, and it occurred to me that we're looking at this ball like this. And really what time is? Time is like space. It's like if I'm traveling from here to down Route 95 all the way to a hotel in Florida, right? And I have reservations in Florida, right? So as I'm traveling, and let's say I'm going through Virginia, so I'm not in New York anymore. I'm not in New Jersey. I'm over the George Washington Bridge, and I'm going down south, and I'm not yet in Florida. So now the question is, while I'm in Virginia, does New York still exist? So a little child is out of sight, has a syndrome that's called out of sight, out of mind. When mommy drops the child off for the first time, and then she disappears, so what does the kid think? Or puts them, even deposits them into a different room outside of Ima and Abba's room. So the kid panics out and thinks, mommy just went off the edge of the earth because I don't see her anymore. They panic out. After a while, they get used to the idea that mommy comes and mommy goes, and the door opens and the door closes. And sometimes we can still have contact with people that seem to have left our life, and somehow they reappear. The child learns to trust that the world is not everything that's out of sight is out of mind. As we mature, we understand there's things that we don't see anymore, but they're still there. So of course, as a person's traveling down to Florida and they have reservations, let's say they never went to Florida before. They know that Florida exists. They have a destination over there, and they have reservations in a hotel. So it's possible for a person to have a destiny, to be over here right now, and to have the experience, the places, the time that we had just exposed in the past was already there. So now let's take, for example, this three-dimensional globe, and now we spread it out like a globe, like a map on the wall, like a two-dimensional map on the wall, right? You know how a map looks. They take a map and they spread out like that, and you see it on the wall. So now let's say somebody, instead of painting on a globe, and you see a little ball going around the outside, let's imagine that somebody is working on a scaffold, like painting on a giant billboard, and they have these myopic blinders on that don't let them see a little bit to the left or a little bit to the right. They can only see what they have in front of them right now, what's inside, a paint by number picture that I have in front, and it says number 3, I'm coloring red over here. The 4, I'm coloring green. 5, I'm coloring blue, and just doing what I'm supposed to be doing over here. And then I move to and the scaffold moves over, and the scaffold moves over, and it keeps on moving over. It goes 365 spaces, along one row, and then it drops down to another row, and it goes 365 across the other row, and it goes 70 or 120 deep, all the way down to the bottom. And then at one point, the person is thrust back from the scaffold that they were working so close with that didn't allow them to see what was above anymore, what was below, and what was before. And all of a sudden they see a giant picture. A picture emerges. And the same thing when we're looking at a picture, any picture that's in a newspaper or something like that, or you see a picture of yourself, you get your yearbook picture back or whatever it is, right? So what is that? Or the wedding picture, or you look at those pictures. What are those pictures, right? Anybody knows a little bit about printing, right? You take a jeweler's loop and you look at the picture. What is it? What is it all? Anybody? What is the picture? There's no nose there. There's no eyes there. What is it? What?
Three-dimensional.
What? It's what?
Three-dimensional.
What is it? You're looking at those little colors. What is it? You look at those, what is it? It's pixels. It's dots. It's all little dots. You look at it. There's no nose there. It's dots. It's all little dots. Everything is little dots, and those little dots all built up to create a picture of a face, the picture of a portrait of a person. Right. So every scene is made up of these little dots. So a person is working a paint by numbers, thing over here, and then what happens? They thrust back and they see a beautiful picture that emerges in front of them. And therefore, it's possible for a person to take a look and say, oh, there's my whole life that passed in front of me, in one moment like that. But I would like to say something, there's even maybe a slightly deeper experience. I remember one Thursday night, oh my gosh, there was a OMG, as my girls would tell me, okay? There was a guy came to, a number of years ago, a fella came, not just knocking on my door on a Thursday night, came banging on my door, ranting like a lunatic, And he was a little bit of an unsettled fella. He never really found his place in our community. He had not just a couple of animals that he took from place to place. It's hard to find an apartment, no pets allowed. I mean, he had a farm, a zoo, that he traveled with him. And sometimes when he was in between places, he left behind his chickens and his roosters and his goats and at our house, until my father-in-law also said, what are we doing with these people's goats? They carry diseases again, have little children around. He couldn't find his place because he had so much baggage. I mean, but real baggage, And then one night he's knocking on my door and he's telling me, you'll find out, everyone will find out, you'll see, I'll see, what, who'll see what, what are you talking about? What are you going on? What do you complete a sentence? What are you talking about? Who'll see? He says, I'm getting rid of my animals. What do you mean getting rid of? How do you get rid of you? What do you mean getting rid of? You're selling them? No, you'll see, I'm getting rid of my animals, and then you'll see, and everyone will see, and everyone will know. And I said, David, hey, calm down. He said, what are you telling me? I said, you're going to get rid of them? He said, yeah, you're going to kill your animals? Yeah? That's what you're doing? You loved your animals. You gave up so much for your animals already. I said, and then we'll see what? And I said, it dawned on me that maybe what he's doing and what he was about to do, it started to dawn on me that he was going to do something, the ultimate crime, and to harm himself. And I realized I had the rest of the night now to try to talk him down from the ledge, because if he came to me, if somebody's coming to talk to somebody, it's because they know you care and they don't really want to do it. They want you to talk them out of it. And so my mind was working 1,000 miles an hour telling him, hey, I love you. You wouldn't have come to me if you didn't know I loved you, And if you do this thing, after coming to visit me, that's going to hurt me. You're going to hurt the one who loves you, And I said, come on, and this and that. And I spent the whole night talking to him here. My wife made delicious Shabbos, cookies, and we ate all the Shabbos cookies, We drank a couple of cups of coffee. He recited a poem, I asked him, what do you think is going to happen if you do this? It's going to be better. He says, no, there's a little white light. He went to a Grateful Dead concert. I think he drank something or ate something or, sniffed something or whatever, and he saw a white light, and he said, I said, you think that white light is going to be good? I don't know. I said, here, I have a poem. I had something else. And we started exchanging poems. I said, you have this stuff written? I said, now you're going to hurt yourself. And no one ever saw those poems. Where are they written? Let me see them, Until I felt comfortable, let him go like 5 o'clock in the morning. He came back the next day with a stack of poems to continue our conversation. Whew. Meanwhile, I ran to the library and I got a book out. I remember I had seen a chapter like this. And a book was Life After Light, or Light After Light, or Life After Light, by, I think, this professor, Dr. Moody. And he describes over there, amongst other things, about people who had aborted suicides. They were not successful at trying to kill themselves. The worst thing the person could possibly do. And he says, and instead of going down a white tunnel into a beautiful, welcoming, loving light, he said they
they were rejected by this telepathic voice that was telling them, "You fool, you fool! How do you reject the gift of life?" And they would say, "Go back to your body and live right. Correct yourself." And that's how they were. And story after story, I read account after account that people, they didn't get that welcoming, that little white light that you're looking for. Get ready for rejection, the ultimate rejection. And being. And actually, the Talmud says that's the definition. Ezehu tipesh. Who was the foolish person? Who was the stupid person? I'll get pepper in my mouth if I say that at home. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm not at home, but maybe I shouldn't say it either. How much more so in public? Who's the foolish person? Hama'abed kol masha biyado, the one who destroys everything that he has. If somebody, you give a kid a car and he crashes and he said, "I'd like a new car." You like a new car. You give him $1,000 and he lights a cigar with it. Or he puts it into a white powder and he puts it up his nose. What did you do? What did you do? You took valuable and now you want more. You want an applause. You took good stuff and you destroyed it, and now you want a recognition for it. So the biggest destruction that a person can do, he destroys everything. He destroys his life, and therefore they all got that. And I wanted to show that and put the scare into them. Don't think things are going to be nicer over there. Like that, especially if you do it to yourself, And I still see him riding his bicycle around once in a while. He's around, But the big gift that I found was a couple of pages later. I started reading stuff that I had never seen before, and they give an account of a lady that she when she stepped back from her life, she saw little dots, like little windows, these little pigeonholes. And she was able to go into and fly into, at one point, instead of going down a white tunnel, she said, "Oh, there's my whole life. There's little pieces of my life." So she went into like a little video file, into a little window, a pigeonhole. And when she went into this window hole, so this Gentile lady describes, in multiple scenes, she says that she went into one place and there was a scene from 35 years ago when she was a young lady and there was a little child that was lost in a department store. And she had this little child on top of a counter who had become separated from her mother, and she was talking to the child and telling her, "Everything's okay, and your mommy's coming back." And you see it, they just announced it over the PA system that that your mother is coming and that you're here and that we're going to be reunited with your mother. And she could feel, she said, normally in this world, you don't feel what somebody else is feeling. I can sense sometimes you have an intuition. You look at somebody's face, you made them happy, you told them you're nice, you told them you did a nice job, you look nice today, I love you, all these things. You realize the feelings that you're giving to other people. You don't feel the feelings that other people are feeling. You don't feel it directly yourself. She says, in that world without barriers, in that scene that she was experiencing going into that file, from a spiritual standpoint, she was able to experience what the other person was feeling, but amplified like beyond. She said she felt waves of kindliness washing back over her. Whatever she was giving to this child and trying to assuage and to calm her nerves was now the biggest medicine, and the greatest exalted feeling was washing over like she had never experienced before. She goes, "Wow, that was unbelievable." And then she's, "Okay, now let me, go take a look inside of another window." And she went into another old-time experience. And there she was saying hurtful words to her mother. Onas Devarim, hurtful words, and to a parent. And she felt like the thud and the pain also amplified and magnified, washing back over her. And then after a number of these different accounts that were brought up in this book, so this Gentile author, she says the following amazing thing. Listen to this. She says, if that is the experience of the next world, and it's not because, a book by Dr. Moody says so, but actually, we have a simple Mishnah in Pirkei Avos that says, Da mala mala mimcha, know what's above from you, right? And that's what the Nefesh HaChaim says, Da mala mala, know what's above, mimcha, is from you. Yeah, and it says, and what does it continue to say in the second parak, right? Ayin Ro, an eye that sees, Ozun Shamas. This is written down before there's a video machine and a tape recorder. V'kol masachet b'sefer nektavim, and all your words, not mystical books, all your words are written down in a book, right? And then what else does it say? It says that Navi Amos said, it says, Magid la'adam masicho. It told the person, what is this conversation? The Gemara in Chagiga says, Afilu sicha kala bein ish le'ishto, even the light conversation between a husband and a wife. And Rashi says on that, he says, Kol masav portim lefanav b'shas misaso. At the time of a person dies, he sees all the little details of his life are all detailed in front of the person. Okay, so this Gentile author writes, and she says the following thing. She says, if that's the experience of the next world, whatever it is that we did to other people, that we experience, whether it's good or whether it's bad. Listen to what she says. She says, I can think of no greater punishment for those Nazi perpetrators than that they should experience whatever it is that they did to other people. They marched families and communities out into an open pit and had them dig their grave in the freezing cold, stripped them bare and dignified them, and shot them into to writhe in pain and to die in a pit like that, and to do one after the other, that they will experience forever whatever it is that they did to somebody else. And that's what the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says: Altis yayish min haparanius. Don't give up. Don't give up on the concept that there's such a thing called payback. And don't think that this one took a poison pill, Hitler Yamach Shemo, and that he a perfume pill, and he slipped from this world, and he escaped. He escaped into the arms, into the face of the deeds, whatever he did. And I remember telling an Israeli cab driver on my way through Tel Aviv, on the way to the airport, we passed by some giant building. I think it's like the Pentagon, in the equivalent in Eretz Israel. And I was saying, if somebody thinks they're going to drive and they're going to go into a pizza shop with a knapsack on their back, and they're going to be, and they're going to have explosives and nails and rat poison, all to cause lingering pain and trouble to other people, and they think that they're going to go to the next world and they're going to be welcome to some kind of a club, a fancy club where their intimate personal needs are going to be taken care of, and there the fun begins. Just the opposite. That's where the suffering begins. Whatever they did to somebody else, that's what they're going to experience forever. And if somebody drives a plane, commandeers a plane into a building, and they bring holy terror down onto a city, and they cause, unending trouble and pain and suffering and lingering pain, then that is what they are going to experience forever. That's what this woman had an insight. It's an unbelievable thought over here. And therefore, what we see is that whatever a person does, we have good news and we have bad news. Right? Good news and bad news. And what's the good news and what's the bad news? I remember once we talked about baseball before. I'm going to tell you, I don't know if anybody here is into baseball. I don't think it's a baseball crowd, but I'll tell you a joke because it's a little heavy of the subject. That there were two guys that were arguing about, is there baseball in the next world or is there not baseball in the next world? Louis and Tom are arguing, baseball in the next world, not baseball. They realize they can't come to a satisfaction in this lifetime. So whoever is going to kick off from the world first is going to come back and tell the other one, at least someone will have satisfaction in this world. So Lou kicks off. And he comes back to his friend, Tom, he's hovering above after the Shiva. He's hovering above at night in his dream. He says, Tom, Lou, is that you? He says, yes. He says, what's the story? He says, I checked it out. He says, is there baseball in the next world or not baseball? He says, there's baseball in the next world. Oh, Tom says, I can't believe it. He says, we love baseball, and I studied all the teams, and I know all the scores and everything, and all the statistics, and I follow it. I'm so closely. He says, what? He says, there's good news, there's bad news. He says, the good news is there's baseball in the next world. He says, what's the bad news? He says, you're pitching tomorrow. Okay. So here we have good news and bad news. The good news that comes out is everything we do is forever. And whatever we did to other people, that's what we experience. And the bad news is whatever we did is forever. And whatever we did to other people, that's what we experience. It's a little bit shocking. But now more good news. So we said, the Talmud says, Ezehu Tipesh, who's the foolish person? He destroys what he has in his hands. The Talmud says, Ezehu Chacham, one of the definitions it says, I think Gemara and Tommy, it says, Ezehu Chacham, who's the person who's the wise person? Haroes Hanolad, the one who can see the future. Doesn't mean you can pick stocks, but he sees, what the future result will be from what he's doing right now. So a person can see the ultimate future, what's going to come out now. So that's the Chacham, that's the wise person. The Talmud says, Tachlis Chachma, the goal of Chachma, now two things. The goal of wisdom is two things: of being able to transcend and to not be sunken into our animalistic desires only, and not to be stuck in the moment. The ability to transcend time and to see the past and to see the future and to see everything is tshuva and maisim tovim. Tshuva, we think Yom Kippur, we beat ourselves up, we go into psychoanalysis. No. Tshuva means we can edit the past, and maisim tovim means we can film further. We're always doing two things when we're making a film. We're either filming further, or we're going back and we're editing the film. So the goal of wisdom is we can do tshuva and maisim tovim. The Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says that one moment of tshuva and maisim tovim is worth all the pleasure of the next world. One moment of life in this world doing tshuva, repairing the past and editing, and doing Maisim Tovim and filming further in this world, that's worth the whole next world. Even though the whole of the pleasure of this world isn't equal to one exhaust fan experience, the same Mishnah says, of the experience of the next world. That's the beauty of what we can accomplish here in this world. Okay? So I just wanted to maybe mention one other important point to expand this idea. Therefore, when we see somebody does an act of kindliness for somebody else, so we have this limited view that sometimes what the person did, that's the experience. Let's say, you made somebody a chocolate cake, so you experienced chocolate cake. It might be even something more than that. And every once in a while, as a parent, my wife and I have had this experience where I say, come here, dear, look out in the backyard. Oh, did you see that? Somebody, unfortunately, fell off a swing, and the little brother or sister comes over and puts the shoe back on and kisses the boo-boo. You ever see it? Oh my God, it's so precious. It's like, or you come home and I wake up on a Shabbos morning and this one is getting cereal for that one, and pouring the milk and reading a book to his brother or sister. You ever see that? No, neither did I. Okay. Every once in a while though, you dream that it happens. And when it happens, it's wonderful. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about, right? It's not all the time. But when it happens, it's a beauty, Not only would that kid get the reward ultimately after 120 years that they put the milk into the Honey Nut Cheerios and they got a spoon for the little brother and sister, or they read them a book and they spent the time and they sat shoulder to shoulder under the same Afghan on a cold Shabbos morning and they read a book to each other and they warmed each other up nicely, But the parents now come and they peek through the window into the next room where they peek out into the backyard and they see this event over here, and the parents are getting nachas. They're getting the pleasure that they're giving their parents. And there's a wide-angle lens. And that's why that somebody who honors their parents, it's a riches yomim, because every time you think of that child, you have good thoughts, you have happy thoughts. They asked one young lady at a parenting class, one rabbi said, what's your parents' greatest source of pleasure? She says, me. What's your parents' greatest source of pain? She says, my sister. A kid can be the great source of pleasure. A kid who honors their parents is a great source of pleasure all the time to their parents. So that means that if a person has a riches yomim, that means every moment of their life is a live moment, is a real moment. But not only that, there's an even wider angle lens. It's not just that they're giving the parents the pleasure. Who else is watching on? Who's observing from on high and observing the same activity that's going on? Who? Hashem. And we're getting the pleasure that we're giving Hashem. And the Torah speaks about a nachas ruach LaHashem. We're giving a nachas ruach to Hashem. A nachas ruach. Every mitzvah bein adam l'chavero, between man and man, is also a mitzvah between man and God, because parents, the Baal Shem Tov says, if you love the child, you love the parents. That means when the parents and children are getting along, the parents are happy, right? And therefore, when Hashem sees, not only if we're davening nicely, but we're helping out each other, we're doing gemilas chesed, we're helping out each other. So when Hashem sees that, so that gives nachas ruach to Hashem. That means we're experiencing the pleasure of Hashem. And that's what the Mesilas Yesharim says. The person was created for the pleasure of Hashem. That's bigger than chocolate cake. That's bigger than giving somebody singing a nice song for somebody, or even sharing a Devar Torah. You're giving a nachas ruach. You experience the pleasure of Hashem. That's the ultimate pleasure. That's the tachlis hatov lehetif. And therefore, now we understand that the Torah comes along and says, "Ve'ahavta l'recha kamocha zeh klal gadol b'Torah." Right? What does Rabbi Akiva say? He's telling us a very, very wonderful piece of advice. Like the Zohar says it's not 613 mitzvahs that we got to do. The Zohar says it's 613 pieces of advice. That means on how to do something, how to pose and how to posture ourselves and how to act, so that every act that we did in every moment of our life should be filled with meaning, and we should have a life that every moment is worthwhile. Not that it should become edited later on, and we should end up with like the bar mitzvah boy who put on his tefillin for his bar mitzvah and then forgot about everything afterwards. It only even had a very short movie. Everything else was edited afterwards. Everything that's edited afterwards is much more hard to face. Reb Dessler says the Gehenna of it, the hell of it is, pardon me, is that when it's edited later on. The Gan Eden of it is the person edits it now, and if a person does tshuva from ahava, returns to Hashem from love, then all the averas can actually be turned into mitzvahs. When the person says, I wish I could deliver more to you, Hashem. I regretted having wasted my time, and all of a sudden, all the negativity can turn into something amazing, into energy that creates positively. The opportunity of life is so rich and so unbelievable. Rabbi Akiva says, "Ve'ahavta l'recha kamocha zeh klal gadol b'Torah." Treat somebody else as you would like to be treated. Hillel told the convert that if you don't like it, don't do it to somebody else. And if you like it, then do that for other people also, because that's what they like.
And that's how you're going to have a long movie, And it also includes Hashem. If you like have gratitude expressed to you, express gratitude to God too. All these things, and that creates a long life. That creates a movie that every moment of the person's life. Rabbi Akiva is telling us how to create a scene so that nothing needs to be edited out. Ultimately, every spot of a person's life is meaningful. It's unbelievable. Now, with this piece of information, we'll wrap it up over here. We understand a very important question. And that question is, what is the difference between me? Pardon me for mentioning we're in the Beit Midrash and everything, but we're in the social hall of the Beit Midrash, so we can maybe take a little bit of a license. What's the difference between me and Steven Spielberg? Yeah, maybe some people have heard of him. He's a famous Jewish. It's amazing. His name is Spielberg. Spiel is a play. He's a Spielberg. He's a Spielmaker. And what's the difference between me? Now, some people tell you about $900 million. But you haven't seen my bank account. Okay, so let's not. I'm misleading you. I'm not giving you enough information. What's the difference between me and Steven Spielberg? That, let's say, for example, I make a movie on a vacation. My wife and I, we haven't been away on a vacation for 15 years. But okay, we're due. Okay, but let's say we went away to the Bahamas, and we took a little camcorder with us, and we had a chance to take some film, and we came back with an hour plus of film, And then the week after we get back, we still got our suntans a little bit, and we invite over some friends, 10 of our closest friends. People we invited for bris, for bar mitzvah, all the good happy occasions. Like, come on over, Motzei Shabbos, we're going to have, hummus and garanim and this, and then while they're there, so we bring the screen down. We don't have such a viewing thing, but let's say now, and we open up and say, okay, everybody, what's going on? Suddenly the door's locked, and we say, okay, everybody get ready. Here's the film from our vacation. And they're showing, here I am showing, there's the ocean, there's the camel, what did the camel do? Okay, there's the bird, and I'm narrating, okay, wave, say hello to the wave. Look, the waves are waving, wave, After 10 minutes, people start saying, okay, I got to go now. I have to, I have to, the babysitter said that we have to get, and I have to get home to get my lantern. Oh, we have my lantern. No, it's my lantern. Your lantern is not going to, you didn't bench it. No, okay, we'll bench it home. We'll bench it in the car. Ixnay on the, we have to go. Suddenly the whole room was going to clear out. And here, my best friends abandoned me. Until my wife and I are left watching the last 50 minutes by ourselves saying, what happened? And I promise you, we'll never be able to get them back into our house for any event. They're always afraid that we're going to show them a movie. So what's the difference between me and Steven Spielberg? When he makes a movie, he makes a 2.5 hour, whatever it is, a thriller, a crazy. People, when they leave the theater, they're nauseous, right? They're crazy. The guy told me, he said his daughter, they went to watch a movie. He says, and she's having nightmares. And he says, oh, that was a good movie. They're out of their minds. They're crazy. They become like, they're disturbed afterwards. He says, oh, that was a good movie. He really stimulated. What's the difference between me and Steven Spielberg? And the next time people see that they have a movie with his name on it, DreamWorks, whatever, they'll pay $15 to go see it, and it's translated into 50 languages all over the world with subtitles, and people are even too willing to watch the movie about how the movie was made. And my movie, I alienated my best friends, and he's inviting millions and millions of strangers into living rooms all around the world. What's the difference between his movie and my movie? Anybody? What?
It was a thriller.
Thrillers, okay. Mine wasn't a thriller? Why wasn't mine a thriller? Yeah.
Your movie was about your real life experience and his was make-believe.
We could make a nice movie about his real life experience. Couldn't he? So I don't know if it has to do with his real life or not real life. His could also be about a real life experience, yeah?
It's getting a little deep, but yours was really about you and you only. Movies that he makes is meant to touch each person. That
So I think you're hovering on a similar point over here, but the truth is, and you're really aiming for the right point, but it can be articulated one step further.
Spielberg edited it and edited it over and over. And you.
So he edited it, but even before editing it, he was thinking about other people when he made his movie. Who was I thinking about when I made my movie? He could make a movie about himself. It would be very interesting to see a movie about him. But who was he thinking about? If we'd be interested in him, it would be interesting to see a movie about him. But when he would make a movie about himself, he'd be thinking, would other people be interested in that movie? When I made my movie, was I thinking about anybody else?
No.
I was thinking about, who was I thinking about? It was a self-involved thing. So when I made a movie, there was no beginning. There was no middle, and no matter how long it is, there's no end. So my movie had no direction. I wasn't thinking about who the audience is going to be. When Steven Spielberg, I promise he doesn't even hold a camera in his hand. He doesn't have a camera. What do you think he's doing right now, Steven Spielberg? He's reading scripts.
He's looking at scripts, and he's thinking to himself as he's reading the script, would my audience love to see this? He's thinking about his audience and what they're thinking. He knows their psyche. He knows Yedei Tzadik Nefesh Behemto. He knows this is going to excite them. Once he finds a movie, he says, this requires 365 little scenes, and now I'm going to go to the bank, I'm going to get money, and we're going to take that mountain, we're going to blow it up, and we're going to blow it up again, and we're going to get it right. We're going to take a father and a son, a husband and a wife, and we're going to make a family scene over here. And we're going to string these scenes together, and then we're going to edit. 90% is going to go onto the editing room floor, and then, that 10%, that 2.5 hours that's left, that's going to wow, because he's thinking only about his audience the whole time. That's what he's thinking. When I made my movie, who was I thinking about? I wasn't thinking about anybody. It was afterwards I said, here, take a look at this movie that we happen to, like Steve Spielberg walking around with a camera saying, this is what I happen to take. That's not interesting, right? What's interesting is when he's editing, therefore he's editing with criteria. And when he's looking only with inspecting for a scene and inspecting for a script that's going to create, that has the criteria, what is my audience? So now the question is, when it says Avraham Avinu lifted up his eyes, who's Avraham Avinu's audience? He didn't walk around with a camera and say, hey, interesting world. He looked, he allowed himself, let me turn on my camera over here, let me take a look over here, let me take a look over here. When people are studying Torah, you know what they're doing? They're saying, how do I make a good Shabbos scene? How do I make a good bracha scene? When they're studying, how do I make a good family scene? How do I make a good davening scene? And I'm going to make now I'm davening, I'm going to make a good davening scene over here. And here's somebody talking to Hashem and trying to penetrate through all the veils of creation and say, Baruch atah Hashem, you Hashem. Until a couple of times the person breaks through and we say, take. That's the one that I want, And I start to build up a whole morning davening from all the davenings I have, and maybe I get one bracha and another bracha until, I finally was able to construct a whole day, and then a whole week, and then a whole year, and then a whole life, out of all the good intention that trying to put a good father-daughter scene, a good husband-wife scene, until the whole thing starts to hang together. Because who's the audience? Okay, we have to state who the audience is. Who's the audience? The audience ultimately is Hashem. And the audience is our grandparents and our great-grandparents, and even our children and our grandchildren who will see our movie into the future. And therefore the person says, Ezehu Chacham Haros Anolad, the person sitting thinking about who's going to be watching the movie of my life. What are they going to see me? What are they going to be watching me doing? What's my motivation? So therefore we ask ourselves at the beginning, what's my motivation? So there's one motivation called that's Yirah Shamayim, that a person is aware of how what I'm doing is being perceived and how it will ultimately be perceived, by the audience that will be viewing my life. Therefore, Steven Spielberg, when he makes a movie, he's thinking about his life. He's thinking about who will witness his movie. When I'm making my movie, so it could be that we go about our lives, no, and all of a sudden the person says, you know something? I realize that if I want to make a movie that's going to have a lasting value to it, that's going to have eternal value, then you know what? So let me take a look and see and consult the Torah, which is a book that says this is how you make a movie that has every moment of your life has lasting value. Between man and between man and God, what can I optimally be doing? That I can put together a blessing scene, and I can put together a candle lighting scene, so that the Almighty has nachas ruach, and so that the parents and the grandparents have nachas ruach. Now, it just so happens that you all played a cameo role in my particular movie that I'm making, and I played a cameo role in the movie that you all are making over here. So our movies intersected over here, but everybody is really making a movie in a certain way. Nowadays, we can understand that. I don't know how Bubby and Zadie understood it, but they had a Mishnah we said before: Da mala mala mimcha. Know what's above from you. Ayin roa, eye that sees. Oz and shemas, and ear that hears. B'kol masecha b'sefer nektav. Everything's written, in a book. So we could take a look at a video. I could look at my old-time wedding video and say, oh, there's everybody that was there. The same thing. Everything we're doing we understand nowadays, has a permanence to it. Maybe there's a camera in the corner of the buildings. I know in the school that we work in, there's cameras in every corner, and somebody does something wrong, they're aware of the cameras. That somebody says, somebody vandalized something, they broke something, we go back and we catch them, a week later, a couple of days later, who picked up that attaché case and walked out with it. It was there. It was all there on the film. And therefore, what's our motivation? One of our great motivations we say over here is this notion that the wise person doesn't waste the time and understands that there's an opportunity, that every moment is a ray of eternity. Every moment is a ray of eternity, and could reap unlimited benefits. And if the person strings enough of those days and weeks together, that's what we call arichas yamim. Talmud says also a person gives charity, gives tzedakah. It's called long life, arichas yamim. He's chasing money all week long, and calling customers and this and that. Finally, he makes a sale, and then he gives charity at the end of the week. And all of a sudden, all that chasing and all that effort, now suddenly takes on meaning. That was all part of to support and to help and to do something good. It wasn't all just for selfish and me and me and me. So therefore, it made every act that the person did up until that point meaningful. The person honors their parents. It's also called arichas yamim. So this is how we end up having a long and a meaningful and a productive life. This is the concept that we're speaking about over here, is that we're making a movie and we want to see that we can hopefully get not an Obie, an off-Broadway, We want to get an Academy Award, We want to get a real award. The ultimate reward is to give that type of nachas ruach to Hashem. Anybody have any questions, anything that we discussed? Yes, please. Hi, how you doing? Good to see you again.
So since we're already on the topic of like the afterlife and what comes next, can you just explain a little bit about the idea of the Gilgul of a neshama, and if the neshama doesn't fulfill its tafkid, if it comes back, is that a mainstream idea or a little bit?
So I'm going to tell you just very briefly, because I don't want to hold everybody here too long, that I know a fellow that got caught up in the Kabbalah Center or whatever for a while, and all they talked to him about was Gilgulim. And he told me, do we believe in Gilgulim? And I told him, yes, we believe in Gilgulim. There's actually a sefer of Gilgulim, by the Arizal. Oh, very interesting. I gave him a tape by a very great Litvisher rabbi, and I said, you're going to enjoy these tapes. When I thought he was ready for it. And he started now to keep Shabbos, he does it. And when he heard this tape, he came back to me very disappointed. He dropped the tape on the table. I said, what's the matter? He says, somebody asked this rabbi, do we believe in Gilgulim? And he says, the Talmud doesn't discuss it, and I don't discuss it. And he says, how come the Talmud? He says, I thought you said we believe in it. I said, we believe in it, but how come the Talmud doesn't discuss it? And I told him, let me explain to you why I don't think the Talmud discusses it, and why this rabbi was dismissive about Gilgulim. And I'll tell you why the Kabbalah Center likes to talk about it, and why we don't talk about it too much. And the answer is like this. Imagine a bride and groom standing under the chuppah, and a rabbi is asked to stand up and to speak to the assembled masses. And he says, Rabbi, would you, we're calling on, and he says, listen, bride and groom, all assembled guests, friends, from both sides and family, I was just at a wedding last night. Can you imagine such a thing, and he says, if this relationship doesn't work out, there's always I don't even say the letter. I don't want to say the words. A gimel and there's always that, and you can always get divorced. And if that doesn't work out, there's always a third time, and there's always a fourth time, and a fifth time. By the time he would even get the first sentence out of his mouth, people would be hitting him, and they'd snatch the microphone out of his hand. What are you talking about these things for? You give advice to the bride and groom. This is how you make it. This is the only chance. This is love. You devote each other, and you share, and you give, and you make each other happy, and that's your mandate. We don't sit there and tell them, if it doesn't work out. You don't talk about these possibilities. In this life, a Gilgul is not a happy option. You tell a kid, if you didn't pass second grade, you do second grade again. Kid doesn't want to be left back in second grade. We don't want to be left back. You don't have to, if you go all the way to Eretz Israel and you forgot something, you can always come back and get it. You took a 10-hour flight, now you're going to come back and get it. It's not happy to have to come back to this world to pick up things. We believe in it, but we don't talk about it because it's not a practical option. People who talk about it, it creates a certain laziness. We'll come back, we'll complete it, we didn't complete it. It's maybe nice to know that we're here to complete some kind of a mission. There is a practical aspect of it. And it could be most of us are Gilgulim, but to think that there might be some kind of future next opportunity just in case we mess up on this one, it's not happy. Once a person tastes of the light of the next world, they don't want to have to come back. It's not a happy option to come back down over here, and have to, dig in this world over here. Now that we're here, okay, we have what to do, right? But once a neshama tastes of that, it's not considered pleasant, and we don't want the thought that there might be a second chance, and sometimes there may not be a second chance. We don't want the thought there's a second chance to cause us to take any less action and to be any less devoted in this life that we have with us right now. Thank you very much, everybody.